To have you and welcome to the channel. Let's talk economy today, guys. Okay, let's talk about tough financial times. Let me do a little adjustment here. Let's talk about tough financial times that are coming and getting to the point of understanding, are you ready for the tough financial times that is upon us? I know for a lot of us it doesn't seem like these times are upon us, but trust me when I tell you they are. So let's kind of do a brief summary of what's going on in the world. This is going to be kind of an open forum, guys. If you want to actually, I'm live on a couple of forums. If you want to say anything, feel free to chime in and feel free to ask a question. But I just want to talk a little bit about some of the recent videos I've been putting out regarding the state of the economy, so to speak. Where we are, and then what can we be doing right now in these tougher times as things get rougher and rougher. All right, in terms of personal finances. Okay, so the first question I have, really, guys, the first thing I want to talk about is just the oil crisis is happening. All right, and I know that you guys are saying oil crisis. Well, there is an oil crisis or an oil issue that's coming along right now, and it's kind of developing as we speak. And the oil crisis right now is really about the fact that the OPEC has said we're going to stop producing so much oil. And that's going to mean that these countries, our 23 countries, 13 in OPEC, plus the 10 additional countries in OPEC plus, said, hey, we are shutting down production by 2 million barrels of oil per day. Now, you say to yourself, what's the big deal? What's that got to do with tough times? Well, because that's going to affect us. It's not only going to affect our oil prices, it's going to affect our gas, but it's also just going to affect, in general, a lot of other things that could see a price increase because of the shortage of oil. And of course, as you may or may not have heard or know, the president said, hey, okay, cool. You guys want to do us like that and make our prices go up? No biggie. What we're going to do, just because of that, is we're going to dig into our own strategic oil reserves. Well, the problem with that is the strategic oil reserves in America are for emergency purposes, right? So, that's an issue. I mean, should we go in there and dig in there and mess with those strategic reserves right now or not? Because that can be an issue. So that's another thing that's happening right now, the oil issue going on. Obviously, you guys know about federal interest rates, Federal Reserve continuing to raise the interest rates and likely going to raise those interest rates again in both November and probably December. Just, we don't know for sure how much, but we know inflation continues to be too high. It shouldn't be this high. And the Fed obviously wants to lower inflation. And they said pretty much they're willing to do whatever it takes to lower it. That means raising the rates again. They're going to keep doing it. The big problem with that is when you raise rates, ultimately you kick everybody into sort of a recession because you do it too much and people totally stop spending. And that can be problematic because the other issue is when people stop spending and buying goods and services, then guess what happens when people stop buying goods and services? Businesses don't want to go out and borrow this high interest money for their own business, and they have to eventually lay people off as the demand for their products or services go down. And so then you have an unemployment issue. Now, we know that right now unemployment is still in the threes, 3.5 or 6, whatever. I think it's 3.5. But that's going to change more than likely as demand lowers, interest rates increase, demand lowers, and businesses start losing money. They're going to have to start laying. They can't, some businesses can't have 20,000 workers. If they're not making the sales that they were making, they have to have 15,000 workers. So that puts 5,000 more workers back out into the into the unemployment line that now need employment. So employment is going to go up. I don't know any other way to put it. And the Federal Reserve, they know this. They know that employment is going to go up. Although it dipped last month. We know it dipped down to 3.5%. It was 3.7 or 3.8. But the trickle down effect is coming. How are you going to be ready? Are you going to be ready? I mean, all these things are happening at once. And I think that's the reason why you have these doomsday people out here that are saying, oh, the world is going to go crazy or crash. The other thing to think about is that 35, 40 years ago, when there was a recession in America, it was only in America, right? But because we've become more of a global society, where what happens in London affects what happens in Mexico, and what happens in Argentina affects what's going on in China, and what happens in Uganda affects what's happening in France, right? All of these different things affect each other at the same time on a more global scale. Even something as simple as the U.S. American dollar being strong right now. Right, it's pretty strong right now. Although we're hitting a recession, it's pretty strong. But the strong U.S. dollar means a weakened foreign exchange for other countries. So the value of the China yen and the euro and the pound, all those things have tumbled because of the American dollar being so strong, and other issues as well. But that makes it more expensive for other nations to actually import things, things that they need, like food and fuel and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of trickling down. Of course, we also know not only all that stuff I just mentioned, but the fact that America has had 6 or 7 straight months of a down GDP, right? So inflation and the increased interest rates that the Federal Reserve has vowed to continue, it's going to take its toll on the American consumer. And then we didn't talk about housing, right? We know the housing is starting to, prices are starting to go down, not necessarily level off, but in some places, very few places, but they're going down some places. So is there a housing bubble that's taking place? All of these things happening. And then on top of all of this is the stock market, right? Stock market getting hammered. The market, I think, that is down this year over 20%, at least S&P, NASDAQ, Dow Jones, over 20%, close to 30% in some cases, that the market's down. I mean, if you had money in your 401k, 403b, or whatever, even just in the stock market, you've lost tons of money. I can tell you right now, flat out, I've lost probably $70,000 in this calendar year in the stock market, in terms of my retirement and so forth. So, and I know other people have that as well. So what can you do? Tough financial times are here for some people, and the tough financial times are actually coming for other people. They're going to be here. Hey guys, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to drop it, because I'm actually live here and we can talk. And I don't really have much script or anything like that. We just want to have a conversation about, what we can be doing right now in terms of the economy, preparing ourselves, right? Our own personal finance. When we look at all this stuff going on in the world that I mentioned, right? How can we start doing some things right now to make sure our 4 walls are taken care of? Because that's the primary thing we want to do. We want to deal with, right? Our food, our housing, making sure our jobs, etc. So, that's what this is about, guys. That's what this quick video is about, or live stream, to say, hey, what can we be doing right now to make sure we've got our stuff together, or we don't have our stuff together, but hopefully we do have it together, right? So, couple of things, guys. The first thing, and I want to say this because, and I know that I'm a part of this type of information, getting this information out. But I think one of the most important things that you can do right now is just to kind of take a step back from some of the negative news that you hear, and from the constant watching of the news and watching the financial news. You got to just you want to be aware of what's going on. Like I mentioned, all those things that's going on right now, interest rates, the foreign currency, strong dollar, possible job issues and job losses coming up, the housing market, right? I mentioned all those things because you just want to be aware of what's going on. I'm not telling you to be scared, to be nervous, to be upset, to be fearful, but I'm saying you want to be aware of what's going on. And so don't spend all your time worrying, but make sure that you understand what's actually happened. Don't be afraid to come out of the house. That's not what this video is all about. That's not what I'm telling you. But at least know what's going on around you and have a good idea, at least a sense of what's happening around you guys. Now, so what I try to do on this channel is give you guys information, right? To say, hey, this is what's happening. Here's what you should be aware of. Here's what you should know. And I also give you some things in terms of what you should know in terms of personal finances as well, obviously, and real estate. So the one thing I want to talk about first and foremost, though, is jobs, right? Because this is going to affect a lot of people when it comes to, in general, what's going to happen, I think. And I think it's going to happen early in 2023. I think this is what's going to happen is we're at a 3.5% unemployment rate right now. And I really believe pretty strongly, looking at the fact that there hasn't been a lot of job increase like there was, in June, July, August, come September, and even now into October. I think the increase in jobs that are out there is going to go down and continue to go down. And I think ultimately in 2023, we're going to have a situation where there's going to be a lot of people that are going to find themselves getting laid off. I think the unemployment rate is going to increase beyond 5, 6, 7%. And, there's indicators that say, hey, that probably won't happen. There's other indicators that say, hey, that's a very real possibility based on what the Federal Reserve plans to do. So how do you get ready for that at your job? How do you prepare at a job? One of the things that I always try to tell people is that when you have a job, try to be steady on that job, right? Try to be good at that job. I don't care if you got the job last month or 2 months or 6 months ago. Try to be good on the job, right? Get better, get steady, be dependable, be there, become valuable on the job. Right? When you become valuable, they don't want to necessarily let you go as well. If two people are equal on a job, right? The person that brings value to the job is going to be, secure the job. The person that doesn't bring value is going to lose their job if they have to start laying people off. So with that said, though, you want to be strong on your job, be good at your job, be focused on your job. But you also want, at the same time, look for some outside sources of income as well. I don't want to tell you to just focus only on your job, right? Be good at your job, but be looking for things that you can do in terms of side gigs, side hustles. Maybe there's a passion of yours that you wanted to do all your life or haven't been able to do, but now you say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Maybe it's art. Maybe it's, painting and drawing. Maybe it's doing something with your hands. But begin to do some of those things, guys, because you're going to want to have, as you guys know, we live in a time here where other sources of income are kind of important because it's, wages have not kept up, obviously, with the price of things, et cetera. So a lot of people have side gigs and do things on the side. I would suggest that you do that. Have a couple of side gigs, or have one side gig that is your main passion that you really enjoy and you love, and do that. And start a business with that if you can. So you got your job, right? That job is cool. There's nothing wrong with having a job and keeping a job and being good at your job. So you become the person that sticks around when they start doing layoffs, if possible. But also pad your income in other directions, other areas. I'll just be as transparent as possible with you guys here. So I do voiceovers on the side, and I've got a few videos on YouTube about doing voiceovers. I do PA announcing. It could be a basketball game, volleyball game, high school, whatever, small college. I do some PA announcing. I do some voiceover. I got 2 or 3 voiceover jobs to do tonight or tomorrow. So I do voiceovers on the side. I also have some real estate on the side, and we'll talk about that as well. But so I've got a few things that I do on the side. And I used to do eBay. I was a big eBay person for many, many years. I put my daughter through college doing eBay, right? Buying low, selling high. 95% of everything I sold on eBay was shoes. Not necessarily sneakers or, gym shoes, although I sold some of those, but I sold, a lot of women's shoes, a lot of men's shoes, etc. 20 years ago, I was a shoe salesman at Dillard's. So I learned I learned a lot about shoes back then. And so when I started doing eBay about 2014, 13, I started doing shoes, and boom, I sold over $100,000 in shoes in a few years to help pay my daughter's way through college. But the point is that if there's a side gig, do it. If you can find a side gig and make some money, do it. I'm not telling you to spend $20,000 investing in a course to go learn how to do a side business. I learned how to sell shoes on eBay on YouTube 7 or 8, 9 years ago when I did it. I learned everything I learned about YouTube and doing it myself. And if you have a side business or side gig, look it up on YouTube and you can probably get somebody to help you with that. Nothing wrong with getting professional help as well. But, don't leave your job until it's actually bringing in, some money, right? Don't just leave your job and say, "Oh, I'm done working." Okay. So I know a lot of people are doing that, right? Got the whole quiet quitting thing going on that people are talking about now. But for the most part, you want to hold on to that gig and hold on to that job and do you a side gig on the side, right? The other thing is this, guys, get your skills up. Get your skills up in terms of what you are in general, right? The main reason that people stay poor in a society like America, where there's opportunities everywhere and there's internet access everywhere, people stay poor because they don't have the right skills. They don't have the right paying skills. They have the low paying skills instead of the higher paying skills. If you don't have skills, or you have a low paying skill based on the history of jobs that you have and the job you currently have, then you got to get your skills up. If that means going to trade school and getting a trade, if that means getting a Google certificate for cybersecurity, whatever it may be, I don't care what it is. It might be the local community college that you go to get some type of certification and mechanic, whatever, refrigeration, HVAC. I don't care what it is. You got to get your skills up. Okay. In order to actually compete for the higher paying jobs and survive into a recession, you got to get your skills up. You got to get better paying skills. However you may do it, doesn't matter how you're going to do it. But, if it means switching over to a more lucrative field, you might have been in this industry for the last 5 years, but you see the ceiling is at a certain point and you can't go higher, switch over to a more lucrative field. Do a Google search and find 100 of the highest paying jobs in the world. Pick one, right? I mean, and I'm not telling you just to go out and do something and be miserable, but I'm telling you for some people, it's better to do a job that they don't necessarily like but pays well than to be poor because they have no skills. It might be better to go ahead and get that job, to at least you can have something that's going to bring in some money. And you should be thinking about this too, as we get ready to enter 2023 and all these things going on. What are some recession proof type of side gigs and side hustles? What are some things that people are going to need no matter what's going on with the economy, right? They're going to need transportation. People are going to need health care. People are going to need someone to watch their children because they got to go off to work. People are going to need food, right? So people are going to need food delivery. So what are some recession-proof type of side gigs and side hustles that you could be doing? Maybe you can switch to. It doesn't have to be, when I say get your skills up, I'm not saying you have to be lawyer, doctor, engineer. I'm saying, what are some of the real basic skills that people need from other people during a recession when things are going bad? Maybe that can be your side gig, right? And maybe the education you need to get to those things can be done for free or what have you, or saved up for. So the other thing is, guys, you got to have, at least during these times, you got to have some intentional focus with your money, right? So in other words, one place you could intentionally focus your money is on emergency money, right? Because as we said, if you're going to be losing your job, or some people are going to be losing their job coming up, you want to be prepared with some extra cash, some extra money, right? So in case you lose your job, right? Or you have a layoff or something like that. Everybody doesn't work in a real comfortable job as, say, like for the federal government, or as a teacher, or as a nurse, some of those real steady jobs. I mean, some people work for, a 20-person company that is just barely open and teetering right. A lot of people work for small businesses like that. So you want to be making sure that as much as possible right now, you are stacking cash, right? Stacking cash for several reasons. Obviously, emergency fund, right? If something goes wrong, but maybe you have an emergency fund already and you're fully stacked with money. You got plenty of cash. Maybe you want to save up for some investments when things really go bad. And when I say really go bad in investments, I'm talking about maybe 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 not treasure, but maybe the stock market, maybe buying stocks cheap. Maybe you see there's going to be a lot of foreclosures that are coming on the market here in the next 6 months or so as we come out of the pandemic, right? Maybe the foreclosure market's going to pick up, right? So maybe that's an opportunity for you to actually invest, because here's the deal. Just because everybody else is about to hit a recession in 2023 or the end of 2022, or some of you might say we're already in a recession, but just because that's about to happen, it doesn't mean that you have to be hurt in a bad way. If you're in a good financial situation, good financial shape, perhaps it's an opportunity for you to take advantage of some assets that you could add to your portfolio during these bad times. So everything doesn't have to be just hold on by a string, barely making it. Maybe if you position yourself right now, you can gain some assets, some appreciating assets during this recession. Just something to think about. Sometimes we got to just kind of shift our mind a little bit and change the way we think from a lack mindset to a more of an abundance type of mindset. And an abundance mindset is when things are going bad, that's when you want to invest, because 3 or 4 years later, you're going to be just fine. The market goes down like this every 3 or 4, not like this, but it goes down a lot every 3 to 4 years, right? Well, people that end up having a lot of money in 4 to 5 years are people that, had money to invest when things went down during a recession. And instead of that being other people, if you're already set, then maybe that can be you, that you come out ahead in a year or 2 or 3 after the recession because you bought assets when they were cheap during a downturn. So that's something to think about as well, guys. So another thing is this, maybe you need to slow down on some of the large discretionary purchases, right? I don't know, the boats, the brand new cars, the vacations. Perhaps there's things that you need to slow down on as we get to a point where all these things are about to hit the fan, so to speak. When I say that, I'm talking about interest rates being super duper high. Now, I don't see interest rates coming down anytime soon, okay? Because the Fed has already told us we're going to keep raising the rates, period. And we're not going to lower the rates until inflation gets around 2%. This is from the Fed, right? Now, if they hold true, and they could always pivot, we know they could pivot in their thinking and the way what they want to present to us. But if that holds true, then rates are going to be, mortgage rates are going to be 6.5%, 7%, 8% for quite a while. I mean, we got spoiled when rates were at an all-time low, in 2020, 2021 or so, of 2.5% or 3% for a 30-year mortgage, right? We got spoiled. Rates are never that low. They're typically in the 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 range, right? So we have to be to a point where we understand those rates are not going down soon. So just remember that. But in terms of real estate, the interest rates, jobs, and all those things, those things are going to come to a head in a lot of ways. Gas prices are going to increase and so forth. So you should be, common, I'm not saying be a minimalist, right? But I'm saying perhaps you can maybe chill out with some of the large extra discretionary spending on some of the more luxurious type of items, not luxury, but the things that you don't necessarily need, right? So maybe focus on those needs to prepare yourself. And then once you get those needs together, when I say needs, I'm saying emergency money. Once you have $20,000, maybe it's $10,000, whatever it is, 6 months of your emergency, whatever your emergency needs are, 6 months of them. If you save up $15,000, $20,000, then that's cool. But even after that, perhaps you don't want to go on that vacation with 10,000 more. Drop that into some funds just in case. I just want you guys to understand, to be ready, because there's a lot of things that's happening around us, and a lot of people I find are not they're not aware of what's happening. They see a snippet here and there on the news or a snippet on social media, but ultimately these things can come, they're going to hurt us. So like earlier, I was talking about OPEC and OPEC Plus and how they pulled back and said, we're going to stop supplying the world with 2 million barrels of oil per day. Well, now America, on the flip side, America says, oh, not cool at all. So guess what? We're gonna the president went in and said, "Hey, we're gonna go ahead and pull from our strategic petroleum reserves." Well, when the president pulls from the strategic petroleum reserves, those are emergency reserves that are there in case of an emergency. Something goes wrong. America has access to oil. They don't have to. If there's a war that takes place in the Middle East between two OPEC countries, and America's not hurt because America has emergency oil. Well, when the president says, "I'm going to pull from that emergency oil," that we need to know that. We need to understand what's going on when he does that, because what happens is, yes, it may make our prices at the gas pump go from $4.85 to to $4.45, right? But in the meanwhile, America is losing its emergency oil because they're trying to make sure that the gas prices don't go out of control. So we need to be aware of that. I'm not saying you got to worry about it. You got to fear and stay in the house and close the blinds, but you still want to know what's going on, right? Because it will affect you, the things that are taking place and the things that are actually being talked about and going over. All right. So, cool. All right. Yep, good point. Somebody said that some people just don't simply know how to calculate their emergency funds because they don't have a budget. And obviously, a big part of what we're talking about, thanks for that comment, is you got to have a budget, right? You want to have a budget because a budget tells you what comes in and what goes out, right? Would you ever invest in a business that didn't know what came in and didn't know what went out? Of course you wouldn't, right? You would look at that business and say, "What are they doing over there? That's not very stable or safe." Or so your household is the same way, right? You have to have a household that says, "I know exactly what comes in and I know exactly what goes out because I got it right here on paper." And it may not be paper, it may be on a spreadsheet, but you want to know that. And then to calculate your expenses, right? You would just simply say, okay, here are my monthly expenses. And I take it, let me just say this, I take it a step further. When I do my emergency money, I do emergency money based on my needs for the month. I don't do it just for everything on the list that I have in terms of my expenses. I have expenses every month, like most people, that aren't a need. And so if it's not a need, I don't count it when I calculate what I need for emergency money. So my emergency fund is not just, my expenses are $3,000 a month. I need five months of that. That's 15,000. No, my expenses may be 3,000 a month, but my my needs from those expenses might be 2,500 a month. So when I actually add that up by 5 months, then I get what, 12,500. So that 12,500 becomes my emergency cash. I don't have emergency cash for my entire expenses times having how many months. Hope that makes sense. But so that's cool. So that's kind of how I do that in terms, but you got to have a budget to even know where to go, right? Your baseline as a human being who has income, your baseline that every single human needs is a budget, right? And I know you're going to see some places online where they say, you don't throw the budget out the window, right? I've done 300 and some odd budgets in a row. And it took me from having a negative net worth to having almost a 7-figure net worth. And part of that is because I was organized in terms of I knew exactly what went out and what came in. I know exactly what I pay every year for a mortgage. I know exactly what I pay every year for food. I know exactly what I pay every year for utility bills, right? Because I have it on a spreadsheet. So you got to get organized. It's a control thing. And it's not because I'm a control freak, right? It's because that you want to be able to control your money. If there's nothing else in the world you want to control, you need to control your money so you can have a good idea of what you're spending, right? So that's kind of how you calculate your emergency money, guys. Thanks for that question. So basically what I'm saying is you need to build a foundation to be ready for these things that are happening in the world all around us. Please do me a favor. Don't sit and watch CNN all day, every day, because you're going to be too scared to leave the house. They're going to have that red ticker at the bottom that says breaking news. And to them, every single thing in the world is breaking news, right? Bus driver leaves a kid on the bus, breaking news, right? Everything is not breaking news. That's very important for that parent, right? But Everything is not breaking news. But if you watch these news channels, I don't care if it's Fox, MSNBC, CNN, whatever it is, everything is breaking news and you won't get any sleep that way, right? And every conversation you want to have is about politics and about, no, chill out. Turn some of that stuff off sometime. Figure out what you need to know here and there so you can make good decisions in your own personal finances, but don't get bogged down watching CNN all day because it will mess you up mentally. It will throw you off and it'll have you scared to breathe almost, right? So, so this is what we're doing, guys. We're talking about basic financial foundation stuff to prepare you for the tough times that I believe is coming. I'm not telling you that the world is World War III and all this type of stuff. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying everybody's got to tighten their belt a little bit right now. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about is perhaps some debt, right? So you're probably saying, well, how can I pay off debt during tough times? Well, I think you should continue to pay off debt. I think you ought to have a debt plan, a written debt plan to pay off at least the low interest debt. I'm sorry, to pay off at least the high interest debt, even during tough times. I think you should pay it down and pay it off, and as much as you can. The reason is because the debt is what keeps you from having actual cash, right? So my thing is pay it off as fast as you possibly can, but don't sacrifice a couple of things. Don't sacrifice putting money towards, let's say, a match of your 401k at your job. Don't stop that match to pay off debt. Okay. I would not stop that match. The other thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't sacrifice paying off the debt for your emergency fund. So getting that 401k match and getting your emergency money together, those things are number 1A and 1B. They're both number one. Then the next thing is you can start focusing on, obviously you have a budget there, but the next thing you can focus on is go ahead and working on some of that higher interest debt that's on depreciating assets. You want to try to lower that if you can, right? And of course, we know that for some people, it's difficult to pay off debt. I totally get it, right? But you got to have a plan, and you should be working that plan, even if it's a small amount, a minimal amount. You want to try to pay off the high interest debt. I always like to pay off or tell people to pay off the smaller balance amounts first, right? Because you can get some of those good wins out the way early. But again, like I said, keep investing though. All right. Don't get to the point where you say, I'm not going to invest anymore. I'm just going to pay off all my debt. No, because you're going to find that like I said, recessions happen, or not recessions, but markets go down every 3 or 4 years, but they come back up in less than a year. So, you're essentially, by continuing to invest, you're buying things at a cheaper price, whether it's index funds, mutual funds, whatever you're invested in, you're buying it at I will say typically, but a lot of times at discounted prices, right? So that stock that was, $230 a share, now that stock is $150 a share as the market's way down. Go ahead and keep buying that. Keep buying that. Dollar cost averaging, what have you. So you don't want to stop that. So just some things to think about, guys. Listen, I didn't want to make this a long one because, and yeah, you're right. Don't create new debts in the meantime. That's one of the things that really helped me. I'm gonna say this real quick, guys. When I was going through, for the last 22 years trying to build wealth, is one of the main things I didn't do is I didn't take on new debt. Right now, up until 2010 or so, when I bought my last car on a used car, financed it. After that, no more debt. I didn't take on any new debt for the last 12 years or so. I didn't take on new debt. And so huge. While if you're going through a tough time or tough financial times are coming, and they're coming, don't finance tough times with a credit card. Okay. Do what you can to not do that. Some of the things I mentioned in here will allow you not to do that, right? Being on the ball on your job, getting new skills, starting a side gig, making sure you got some emergency money and some cash. Those things will stop you from making those mistakes, guys. So just keep that in mind as well. Good point. So listen, I didn't want to make this a long video. I want this to be a short video, right? But if you have any questions, if you have any comments, I would appreciate you guys dropping that. If you're watching this on IG, go over to YouTube, put in Smart Money Bro in the search box and check out this video, share it with somebody, subscribe to the channel over on YouTube, guys. And just give us a shout over there. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think about these things in terms of how to survive the tough times that I believe is on its way. Right? Subscribe. Drop me a comment, guys, and ask a question. I'll be more than happy to answer a question for you guys as well. Listen, I always say at the end of my videos is this, guys: the best person to take care of the old you is the young you. Take care of yourself and take care of other people. All right. Till we wrap again, guys. Peace.